Dr. Ajayan.
Hello, how are you?
It's good seeing you again.
Nice to see you.
You're the founding chair, obviously, of Rice's Material Science and NanoEngineering.
Mhm.
You're known for working with Dr. Ejima and Dr. Edison, is that how you say
Yes.
his name? On the carbon nanotube back in the day. And when I was speaking with a lot of your group members, everyone could agree that you're very relaxed.
Do you
and
still
have
call
a-
that opinion?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been nice because we've all had a lot of freedom in the lab to experiment with whatever we wanted to work with. And you do have a group with maybe 40-ish postdocs, grad students, and visiting scholars from all around the world, which
Yep.
is also what drew me to the group because of the diversity there. So I have listed here that your interests range from science and technology to poetry.
I don't know who wrote that, but there is some truth to it, yeah.
And of course, you've got a lot of awards over the years, even 2 Guinness World Records, which is cool. I remember.
You can create a third one.
So, being born in India and then growing up in another culture,
Mhm.
how has that affected your curiosity for the sciences?
I think, human beings are by nature curious. Cultural influences can affect how far you can take that curiosity. I grew up in a very small village in India and then went to cities to study and to international locations to pursue my career. So I think these multitude or multiple cultural influences make you wholesome in many ways, right? I mean, the way we think in one place is slightly different when you go to another place. I grew up in a conservative society, religious society in India, southern part of India. But as you pursue, your journey through various places, your ideas change and you realize that what is true in one place does not really hold true in another. One of the reasons why I chose science as my career is that science transcends these cultural differences in many ways, because there is a certain stream of logic there, and you can be satisfied with one way of thinking, and that was kind of interesting for me. And, I would say that certainly influenced my being in science.
So did
But
you have like a role model?
I have a lot of role models, but particularly I am excited about people who think out of the box, and particularly people who have done something very well and suddenly decide to change, or who is proficient in one thing but at the same time think in a very orthogonal way, right? People like Buddha, for example, right? He was a king and suddenly he decided to, leave everything and do something else. Marcus Aurelius, he was a king but also a poet, right? I mean, so I'm fascinated by these people who actually think orthogonally, or at least in their mind there is this conflict all the time.
Okay.
And I'm in many ways, that kind of person. I'm in science, but I kind of think in many times in a different way, and I think that makes life very interesting.
So is that kind of what has inspired
Certainly,
sort of your groups?
Yeah. I'm very interested
overall?
in, boundaries and, like borders. When I go to a country, I think one of the things that really fascinates me is these border between countries and how people transition, right? Interfaces in materials is the same story. And the most exciting thing is interfaces between two different types of materials. So this transition from one to a very different or even slightly different other is something quite fascinating to me.
So, along those lines, what do you think is the next big thing then, at least for science and maybe for the group?
So I was meeting a few folks from Sigma Aldrich who was here for an endowed lecture, and I was telling them that from my perspective, again, it depends on what specific topic you're talking about, but let's talk about materials, because that's the area that we are working in. To me, the next big thing would be related to three different areas that I'm getting excited about. Right? One, of course, is artificial intelligence. Right? How do you use, it could be simulations, or it could be big data analysis, or even real artificial intelligence. How do you use that kind of emerging ideas into material science? In discovery of materials, or in creating new types of structures and so on. That would be, I think that will enter into the stream of engineering and materials in a big way. The second thing would be complexity. People talk about Internet of Things, but I think the next generation of structures and devices and platforms or systems are going to be quite complex, with lots of embedded, additional peripheral structures. So it could be sensors, or it could be power, all embedded in very complex kind of systems. Would again make much more responsive, much more intelligent kind of designs. Right? So that's another area that is emerging. And the third would be this type of bottom-up building. Right? One of the things that has fascinated me is the difference between the way we manufacture things and the way biological systems manufacture things, right? The top-down versus bottom-up. And I think bottom-up is going to be perhaps the most exciting way of building things. It's a paradigm change, right? A bit like playing a Lego, right? You build things from pieces that can be well designed and manufactured. So it has come into the picture in various ways, and probably the latest thing is this additive manufacturing, right? How do you print things or build things from bottom up? So I think that's also going to have an influence in how we do engineering and material science.
And hence Dr. Cordero's addition to the...
Yeah, Zach does metal printing. We have started to do some polymer, and one thing I'm actually fascinated about is printing food, 3D printing of food. I told you, I think, before, right? I think these are opportunities where you can redesign or redefine, fundamentals of taste, for example, right? So I think, people have been talking about bottom-up building for a long time. Of course, there are limitations. When you come to very small particles and so on, it becomes much more challenging because you don't have the tools to do it properly.
But with your group being as large as it is, it seems like it's within reach, at least with all these visiting people coming in and bringing in knowledge of these different aspects. So.
I think science is a universal approach to logically thinking about things and understanding things and building things, right? And that universality is reflected in the kind of the diversity that we have in the group. And it's always fun to talk to people who are coming from different parts of the world, because although at the end of the day the logic is going to be the same, the way they approach things and the way they do things are different. Right? And I've always enjoyed discussions with people with different backgrounds, and it's not just ethnic diversity that I'm talking about, even topical diversity. We have students and people coming from physics, or chemistry, biology, all different backgrounds. We even have theorists embedded in the group, right? So I think this kind of a crosstalk and this type of cross-fertilization is the most important thing. We are in academics, right? I think our mandate is to really think creatively, think out of the box, and sow the seeds that will ultimately become something, right? I don't want to pretend that I'm going to build some revolutionary thing, but I'm going to think about sowing that seed. I think that that new idea is what matters, particularly in academics. Of course, there are topics, areas where you could actually go towards the development side, but our group, and I think material science particularly in universities, are very basic science oriented, and that's what I would like to be.
Do you think there's any disadvantage to having some some of the larger groups on campus, being one of the larger groups?
Well, there are advantages and disadvantages, right? I mean, advantage would be that if you have an idea, you can easily try to implement it because you have a lot of manpower, right? And can easily move into new fields if you would like. The disadvantage is management, right? I mean, management is always an issue as the group grows. We are always multitasking, so it's a limited amount of time. So you have to create a structure that would adjust to that kind of size, right? So you have postdocs and you have senior people who kind of create a hierarchical structure, and that's the only way you can do it. But our group has been always big for quite a while now, and I don't know. And also it creates better opportunities for diversity.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to have, I don't particularly want to have a Chinese group or an Indian group, I want to have a group where people from all over the place come and all kinds of backgrounds come and talk and get motivated and talk, discuss. So that's my example. I mean, the best time I have is when I'm brainstorming an idea with students. And I don't really get too much time to get into the labs and do experiments myself. But that intellectual pursuit is what defines academics, and that needs diversity, that needs multidisciplinarity.
So, since you are very busy, being the department head and all the other things that you have to do, if you had like 1,000 emails and you could only answer 100 of them, how would you prioritize which ones to answer first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I struggle with that question all the time, right? I mean, I've stopped answering phone calls to start with, so that part is at least figured out. But email. I mean, a lot of emails are junk email, right? And those are easy to delete, and on first look you can see which ones are the real ones. Of course, there are emails with deadlines, and again, I can recognize many of them, right? So those are the priorities. Students are obviously priority, although I get a lot of emails from students who are not part of my group, who wants to be part of the group, and many times I don't get to answer them. But again, it's kind of pattern recognition. You look at these and you know which ones are the good ones after a while. Right?
You are an algorithm.
Yeah. I mean, it may not be 100% true. So sometimes I get emails saying, I sent you 10 emails, why don't you reply? So I miss them. But that's fine.
So I mean that goes along with the lines of work-life balance too. So how do you kind of manage your time also with your family?
Yeah, it is very tricky. I mean, I travel a lot, and I'm always working. So the problem, again, I don't know if it is a problem, but a challenge with academic life is that you're trying to do many things at the same time, and your work kind of you don't stop work when you leave the office. It kind of goes with you, right? So you're always working, and I'm sure my family kind of suffered from that perspective. With time, I have become better in managing multiple things. From the beginning, when I was a young faculty, it was much more difficult.
Getting started.
Not only getting started, to balance time. Right. So now, I set aside at least a certain amount of time for the family. So I can do that because I have much more flexibility. But it's a challenge. Work-life balance is very challenging, particularly in the U.S. because there's peer pressure to perform, and you're always driven. And I would say that Europe probably has a better balance because it's all about perspective, and obviously you cannot ignore what goes around you. So there's peer pressure of various ways, and that changes depending on where you are. I'm not saying that I have reached my best optimization in terms of work-life balance, but I think the family has kind of also adjusted with this type of schedule.
So is there a skill that you wish you still could learn, or that you feel like you're missing?
In work or in?
In both.
I wish I had a much more rigorous training in mathematics. I mean, education in India was okay, but there was a lot of memorization, and there was. I think it should have been factored in, particularly for engineers, more analytical, more mathematical. That I miss. I think that would have helped my career better. In terms of life, I wish I could sing, for example.
Really?
One thing I have really enjoyed in the last many years is my daughter has started to sing, and I see how much I get enormous amount of pleasure listening to her, and that has also driven me to listen to other music. And of course, she sings Indian music, but all music are exciting.
Oh,
So that unfortunately, I never learned to play an instrument or sing. I mean, that I think music is in my heart, but unfortunately, I cannot bring it out in the right form. So that frustrates me sometimes. You can't have everything. Right?
So is it classical or is it rock and roll?
I mean, I normally listen to Indian classical music.
Okay.
Right.
Is that what your daughter
Or
sings?
Western classical music. I mean,
Okay.
I suppose. But I also enjoy other types of music, Bollywood music, for example, right? Or blues or jazz. I mean, all these things I enjoy. So I don't know how, but I think maybe it is a stretch, but I could have become a good musician. I mean, if I had
You could do
trained.
both. It's not too late.
No, I mean, it's also a question of time. But one thing I sometimes tell my wife that I kind of missed my midlife crisis because my daughter started singing. The reason why a lot of people go through a tough time in your midlife is because you feel some level of emptiness because you've done certain things and you don't know what the next thing is. But somehow music came and filled that space for me. So.
Oh, that's great. That's a fun fact.
I'm sure that different people have different ways of filling that space.
Okay, so a lot of the people that read my blog are undergrads that are kind of on the border.
I actually looked at your blog yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you write very well.
I like writing because it's one of my strengths. So I used to work on that in a literature, because my high school was like our Cambridge program. So University of Cambridge had some ties to it, and we had to study a lot of British literature. So I was a big Shakespeare fan.
No, it's a wonderful thing that you can write. That's what a lot of professors like us do. Write. We write a lot, and many times, when you are able to express something in the most exquisite manner, you feel joy. I mean, I do feel joy. I think it's a talent that you should never leave.
I like it. It's like, so every Sunday when I write, it's actually something I look forward to. It's not much of it. I used to think it was going to be a chore to do the blog every week, but it's actually something I look forward to.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like a release almost, and being able to just freeform in a different way. Something I'm trying to learn how to do better, because some people ask me, what's a material scientist? Like, they don't know. So being able to say how we affect the world is something that I'm working on, because
That's
sometimes they're like, why did you become a doctor or whatever? Because this is cooler. But yeah, and so a lot of those people are undergrads too, that are in that are wondering, for example, like, what's the next step for me? Let's say I chose science, I've chosen engineering, and I'm getting my bachelor's degree, but now, and so that's kind of what the blog is about. It was kind of inspired by the undergrads that I used to work with, part of the Society of Women Engineers, and
Yeah.
they said it'd be
Yeah,
nice if
my
I had that
first,
perspective.
elder daughter is graduating, she's in the same shoes.
Yeah.
She was mentioning,
So she's like, yeah, what's next? Should I do grad school? Should I just go straight to work? And I mean, for me, I was like, it was dependent on each individual person,
Mhm.
like what they wanted to do when they were done, and I don't know. So what do you?
I think it's a it's a process, right? I think you probably don't have enough data points to figure out what is the best thing for you, next. But my advice would be that when you are young, I think you have multiple opportunities, and whichever direction you go, you should be fine. But try to go and try to. Not everybody has the same opportunities.
Mhm.
Try to go in a direction that you think will bring enjoyment for you, or excitement to your life, or I mean, there are a lot of distractions in the world, and I think we are driven by distractions most of the time. And to me, those things are immaterial. I think what really matters is your intellectual curiosity and pursuit, right? So my one advice, if I were to give an advice, would be to think, right? Think until your brains get stressed, and thinking is what is missing in many people's lives, and especially at that age, you can be distracted by various things, and your thoughts become too diffused. And think, and I think we are distinguished because we can think, and think through things. Don't take things for granted. And if you can exercise that and make that as part of your life, you'll have a much better life. It doesn't matter whether you're a material scientist or a doctor. I think thinking is important for you, and I've always felt, and maybe this will become more evident as you grow older, that service is important. I think don't think about what you can get, think about what you can give. I think if that becomes part of your life goal, then life becomes much easier.
Is that why you have nothing on your desk? You've given all your stuff away?
Exactly. I would like to give away everything, but I suppose you need certain things to kind of. I wanted to have a paperless office. Actually, this is something that I wanted, but I don't think.
You're very close to it. Okay, one more question for you. If Batman and Spider-Man were in a rig together, who do you think would win?
I like Spider-Man.
Why?
I worked on some things related to gecko type of materials. And,
Oh, okay. Biomimetics stuff.
And spiders have always fascinated me. They're kind of interesting creatures, and I grew up with spiders. Sometimes you go to the bathroom and there's a spider, a big spider there. In India, I'm talking about. So I like spiders.
But Spider-Man's like mutated with so it's inherent in his blood, right? And then
Yeah.
Batman has to create the technologies to do what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, again, I also saw a lot of bats when my early young days. Bats are always kind of elusive.
Ah,
Right?
elusive.
Yeah, they are always, to me, was elusive because they kind of stay all the time in the dark and kind of strange animals. But plays, and they were part of your. Yeah. I would say Spider-Man.
Thanks, Dr. Ajayan.
Thank you.
That's it. I don't think I have anything else.
No, that was nice. Thank you for talking to me.
Yeah, I always told people, yeah, Dr. Ajayan, he's just inspiring. You go to his office, he has a new idea every time. The last time was the food, printing out food. And then the time before that was something else.
Yeah, I asked my family to buy me a 3D printer for printing food and refused.
Why?
They thought it was just waste. I mean, I buy a lot of things and never use it, so they realized that they're always complaining.
It's there for pizza. I know they've done it with pizza. So.
Yeah, they have done with candy as well. But that's not the point, right? I think, let's say you can print food with, let's say, micro scale or nano scale porosity and things like that. You know, the texture you can really control. And I'm sure that this is a way to redefine taste in many ways. Right? For the first time, you are able to put things with whatever geometry you want, whatever porosity you want. You're talking about food, right? Because normally what we do, we put the dough together and then bake it, right? And it creates a porosity.
Yeah.
Right? But that is not controllable. Imagine that you can control this porosity, right? Just like you make materials for various things. Then you can define taste very precisely.
Yeah, you should. We should start a restaurant here. It could be.
Yeah, I would like to start a company with 3D food printing, but I don't know if it is.
So, what would the 3 top values of that company be?
Redefining taste. That is what I'm after.
Oh, that's the slogan?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.